And we are live. What's going on? LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube Live. It is your man, Coach Rowe. We are back for I think this is season 4. Yeah, season 4. Man, that's wild. Season 4 of the Men's Circle. I like to welcome you guys all back. This is our first episode, I don't even call them episodes, really. I call them sessions. It's our first session of the season. Like to welcome you guys back to the first row. Always appreciative of you guys being here. My apologies for being 5 minutes late, but technical difficulties sometimes are mofo. And so now that we've worked through those technical difficulties and I have an internet connection, let's jump straight into it. So tonight's topic for the Men's Circle is the Patriarch. Now, I always like to say what I mean by my topics. But before I do that, I want to give my brothers who have joined me tonight the opportunity to introduce themselves and welcome them back to the Men's Circle. We'll start with you, Bruce. It looks like you were in here before me.
All right. Well, happy to be back. Thank you for having me again, Billy. I'm excited that we're getting season 4. It's starting off again. Right back in the saddle. For those of you who are new, my name is Bruce. Bruce Gatewood. Me and Billy go back junior high, I'm pretty sure. And I am just looking forward to the conversation. I'm looking forward to the gems that you guys always drop, the insights, the different perspective that is always brought forth, and the tools that I'll get to walk away with. So looking forward. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Brother Tim, what you got?
Tim Rushing. I've said this a few times, but don't really have a memory when I go back as far. That doesn't include Billy in it somehow. So he goes almost as far back as my old memory will take me now. First grade, all the way back. And, I'm glad you corrected yourself and called these sessions because, man, it's funny because I was looking for the invite. I've been kind of hunting the invite, like, what's up? How long is this damn break going to be? You know what I mean? When we get back, and I seen the emails. Like, okay, I don't even need to mess with them. But I, with you, Bruce, I really love these sessions because it allows us to kind of not only talk about what we're going through, but talk about solutions if we got them, strategies if we need them, and you don't feel as isolated. You're not as alone. Your problems aren't. You come to find that your end of the world problems you dream up in your head you're not alone in that. You're not. Your problems aren't as unique as you think. So
right.
That's why I not that you want to hear anybody else going through problems, but it's nice to know that people have survived them.
So, right. No, I agree 100%. And for those of you who are new to the first row, my name is Coach Rowe again. Long-time watcher, long-time participant of the first row. First-time caller. But really the purpose of the first row as a channel and the first row's content is about growth, accountability, and I think both Tim and Bruce said this, gems and solutions, right? It's not that you want everybody to have this horrible life or, man, I hope they go through the same problems I go through. But what it is about is if we have gone through the same and or similar problems, being able to hear your experience can help me with mine, and you being able to hear my experience can help you with yours. And sometimes those conversations have this duality of both being the teacher and the student at the same time, because you're giving somebody a different perspective that they may not have thought of, and they're at the same time giving you that perspective that you may not have thought of. So forward to this particular topic. This is actually a topic that I was thinking about before we went into break from last season. And it was like one of the things I was like, man, I wanted to get to it last season, just there were some other topics that took priority. But now that we're in season 4, I was like, this is what I want to start off with. Because as you guys know, for me, I'm pretty big on manhood. I'm pretty big on growth. Doesn't mean I get it all right. Doesn't mean I get it all perfect, but I am pretty big on these things. And I really want to unravel some of the stuff around this topic, the Patriarch. So as always with my topics, I'd like to start off with what does the topic mean to you? So I'll give the floor to you gentlemen. I'll allow you to decide who goes first. But when you think about this topic, the patriarch, what comes to mind for you?
Now, Bruce hit it.
Go ahead, take it away, Bruce.
my why, my reason for being on this path of growth, for being on this journey of trying to find out who I am to better me to. And I tell my wife this and my kids this, the better I am for me, the better I can be for you guys, right? And so I think as the patriarch, as the man of the house, as the protector, we say provider, but we live in a society. My wife is a worker bee. We've been together for 21 years, and she ain't never not had a job. She always make her own money, so she doesn't need me to provide financially. But the things that I provide are very important to me, very important to the foundation of our union, right? And that's our friendship, our relationship, or our parents, right? That as partners in that as well. So I think that my role in this family is the exact reason why I want to be a better Bruce, right? So I think, and I don't know, I think it stems from my childhood not having my dad not being a dad, not showing me the ropes, not showing me how, always wondering like, how could, like, why would you not? Right. I'm not judging nobody, but for me, once I found out I was a father, that changed everything in me. So
Right.
Long-winded, a lot of word salad, let Bruce hit it, put some ranch on that word salad. But that's what it means to me.
Gotcha. Tim, what you got?
I just think of responsibility.
I think of the patriarch. Now, here's the thing, though.
Is to me, it's about what does it mean to
you, and when you have your partner, do those things align? Because if they don't align, there's going to be problems. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be things that you're going to be asked to do, and some things you could learn and adjust and provide. Some things just aren't innately in you, so you have to. I think one of the biggest problems we make as a society is we get into relationships with people and we expect them to mold into the shape that we want them to. And that's not always the case. So it's very important that you have to define these roles for yourself. So for me, I don't have to be the main decision maker in my household, but I have weight. I have enough weight to where nothing's going to get done without my okay. And then there's certain times where I have the entire say, and there's times where I relinquish say, because like Bruce, my wife, very skilled individual, very knowledgeable person, very skilled in some areas, and I'm not as skilled. So I'll acquiesce in those areas for her to make the decisions because I know they're better. She's more equipped to make them than me. So in a way, that's still kind of leadership, knowing who to trust with the decision making. But, I'm looking for somebody to be a teammate where we could share responsibilities, because it gets boring. At least for me, it's not so much the responsibility. It gets boring when every decision's up to you. Like if I had somebody that was like, well, what do you want for dinner? Well, anything you want, babe. That would bore me to tears after about a month. Or what movie you want to watch? Whatever you want, babe. Those types of things. So I wanted somebody that was more somebody I could play off. I was interested in playing tennis with somebody as opposed to just hitting the ball and it never returning. So I think the important thing is whatever the patriarch is to you, you make sure that when you're seeing somebody and dating somebody, that you make sure that you're in line. So proper expectations are set. If not, it's going to surface, no matter how harmonious you think your relationship is. So hopefully that was a little bit more clarity what I expect. But back to you, brother, bro.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Both your perspectives of the patriarchy being within your family. And when I initially thought about this topic, I initially thought, okay, my role it really generated back in last year when I was spending a lot of time in California visiting the boys for a week every month. And the house I was in, I had asked myself this question. I said, how do I want to show up as the father in this house? It's not my house. I don't run the house. I'm just a guest staying there. But it was a question that I asked myself. How do I want to show up as the father in this house? And when you're in a space that, it's when you're growing up and your parents say, well, I pay the bills, so I call the shots, right? When you're in a space where you don't pay the bills and you don't really legitimately call the shots, and then you have to ask yourself how you want to show up in that area as the father and as really the patriarch. It's fascinating how you look at things that are typically not associated with the patriarch. Like you guys were like protection providing, right? I'm like, how do I want to display nurture as a father to all the children in the house, even the children that aren't mine, right? How do I want to display that? And so because of that perspective of it, it moved me out of just being the father in my house and just being the father to my role of seeing the patriarch as a role is the role in which I am able to be the glue to my family, not just my immediate family, not my wife, my kids, and my godchildren and all that stuff, but to my mother, to my father, to my sisters, to my brothers, to my aunts, to my uncles, to my grandparents. Like, how can I become that glue? Because we always hear about the monarch of the family, right? Big Mama, she had soul food Sundays, and that brought the family together. And there was a whole damn movie on that, right? So we always are told about the monarch and how she keeps the family together, but we shy away from the conversation on both how the father can, what's going on, cousin? How the father can be the glue to the family, or they can be the acetone eroding at the very connective tissue of the family. And so when I started thinking about this topic, the patriarch, I started thinking in the aspect of how do I bring my family together, and not just my immediate, but my overall family together, and be that in the Bible, they talk about being a husband, being the band around the marriage and holding that marriage together. How can I be that band around my family, holding that together, understanding that there's going to be times where that band is a little unstable, a little more flexible and pliable, and sometimes a little more stringent and constrictive. Understanding that about my role as the patriarch, but how do I jump into that role and how do I operate in that role? And so for me, I started thinking about that when I started thinking about this topic on how can I be that family glue to keep us adhered together. So that's what the topic meant to me. I do, as always, have. Oh, Tim, you just came off mute. You got something?
I was going to say, it's interesting you say that because you could even expand that to the community. So, like, my son playing flag football this year. He's a sixth grader, and he got a play book for like 5 plays or whatever. He doesn't know how to run these routes. He doesn't know what they're called. So I'm like teaching him, hey, that's a hook, and that's curl, that's a slant, that's a post. I'm teaching him all this stuff, and he's out there running them, throwing it to him. And I see this gang of little kids, kind of like in his age bracket, they don't have anybody, and they're trying to work on it on their own. And they keep looking over, and they're looking at us, and you could tell that they're like, man, my dad, I ain't got a dad that does something like that with me. And I had one kid jump in. He was smaller than Noah, and he's like, I could guard him or whatever. And he's like, he's helping with the practice. And I was like, he mentioned something about his dad not doing that. And I was like, well, listen, anytime when you're older and you have children, make sure you remember the moments where you felt without it. Make sure you give those to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see him like, wow, like that was like that's going to be like a hallmark moment for him that he doesn't remember, but it's going to be in there probably subconsciously as he gets older. But that expansion, like how you show up, like what's the feeling somebody gets from you? Do they feel like you're the fun uncle? Because that's really fun and all, but it doesn't. What you get in fun, you sacrifice respect for and reverence. So what is your vibe that you give off? And the reason why there's a lot of movies about, in my opinion, about the big mama and all that is because that's all fun and games. The emotion is all fun and games, but usually dad is the authority figure. Authority isn't fun to put in a movie usually. So
Right.
that's kind of like my take.
And then Tim, I like what you said. What you sacrifice in fun, you give up in respect and reverence. That's crazy. That's something that I struggle with because my wife and I have two different parenting styles, right? And she's a lot more lax and a lot more fun. And I sometimes notice, and I think that to myself, like, should I relax on that? Should I say anything about that? Should I let that slide? But I love how you said that. And I've heard it like that before, but I felt it right when you said it. Because sometimes I think to myself, that would have never happened if I would have been more strict, right? If I'd have stayed in that, I like what you said there. That was good. And look at you already.
That's kind of part of it too, is like what's really helped me, because I used to have the snappy, real snap, and sometimes I'll kind of occasionally get out of that and I have to snap myself back to reality. But what really got me kind of out of that was I started running myself through a filter. So I'd ask, like, okay, did my son do this to irritate me on purpose, or was it just him doing and I'm experiencing it? Like, did he intentionally try to set me off? And if I can't answer that concretely, yes, then I'm like, okay, let me try it this way. But then again, then it gets to the point like, hey, look, I done told you about this. The next time I'm going to take it personally. And that usually gets the result done. But you don't have to pull out the big gun every time if you kind of run it through that filter process.
Mhm.
Because you're right, when people are a little more relaxed than you, it's like, okay, is everybody waiting for dad to say something? All right. And it's like go Beetlejuice on him. It's showtime. And then nobody likes showtime. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you also lose impact where it's like that it gives them an excuse where he's always about something. And now it loses its merit. But when that slap comes, he should have seen this coming, and then it's like it snaps him kind of back into reality too. But yeah, man, it's and then sometimes that looks different to different people. We got different relationships. Sometimes I do give the fun uncle vibe to some people, but for the most part, we talk about providing a lot. I think one thing we forget that we provide is we provide wisdom
Mhm.
to generations. And we tell them, like, listen, I see the path you're going down. And then if they take it, great. If they don't, they'll be like, man, I should have listened to you. And
Right. Can't lead a
shoulda,
horse
coulda,
to
woulda.
water. Or you
Right,
could lead a
right.
horse to water, can't force him to drink.
But yeah, I'm glad we're starting off early, Bruce.
Yeah. I think about that because Tim, most of the kids whose parents I'm friends of, they call me Uncle Billy, right? And there is a pretty good balance between Uncle Billy. It's cool. We can go to Uncle Billy's house and have a good time. But it's also like, even when like Noah would come to visit, it's like, yeah, I'm Uncle Billy, but you still fall under the same guidelines that my thuds fall under. And I'm going to give you the same leeway and time to acclimate to our environment that I would give to my children. So you're here for the first week. You're going to have to kind of decompress from whatever the schedule is in your household. And then in our household, yeah, well, you only get 3 hours of game time. So I don't know what to tell you, but that's what you get here. If you don't like that, you don't have to come here. But if you like all the other things that we do, which is a lot, then so what? You only get 3 hours of game time. But there is that, sacrificing, like you said, sacrificing that fun for that reverence, because yeah, I can be Uncle Billy, but if I'm just fun Uncle Billy, then I'm a doormat. And then you come here like, nah, hey, put more time on my tablet because I want more time on the internet. Who are you talking to? So I think there is a part of give and take and figuring out when to be hard and when to give that what I'm going to call grace, right? The challenge for me was for a long time, and probably with my oldest son the most, I was always just hard. And though there was nothing but love behind it, and because I would tell him, I was like, yo, at the end of the day, do you think I want you to succeed or fail? Like, what is it that you think my objective is for you? Which one do you think I want for you? He's like, fail. So then why would I ever give you any advice counterintuitive to that? And I didn't realize in telling him that, though it didn't help me in the moment during his adolescence, now that he's an adult and we have conversations weekly and we're talking about things, like there'll be times where he'll tell his friends of like, yeah, I told you, call my dad, man. He really knows what he's talking about. Like, and I think, especially in the patriarchal role or in the patriarch role, we have the inherent desire to want to pass on our wisdom faster than we were able to receive it ourselves, right? Because, like you said, Bruce, your pop's not being there. There's wisdom that he may have had or not had that he never passed down to you. And so you had to kind of just figure it out and hopefully glean from some other role models along the way. Whereas my dad was there in the house. And I think he was, I'm going to use this word, I feel like at times he was so disgruntled. It felt like he was a disgruntled employee and he just didn't have the wherewithal to share some of the wisdom and some of the experiences that he had gone through. I was talking to one of my spiritual fathers today, and it was interesting having this conversation with him because he's getting up there in age. He's not in his 80s yet, but he's getting up there in age. And he was like, yeah, I remember I used to go to the college dorm and I was trying to be the weed dealer. And this dude would always like be in the way of me doing my transactions. Now, this is like somebody I met who got me involved in church, but he's telling me about him growing up and the things that he was encountering. And though we had never had that conversation before, because I would have never known that was his lifestyle before, I think about the people that story, giving them that story sooner in life would have been able to help. And so again, that becomes, like you said, Tim, that community patriarch role where, yeah, okay, I see your dad's not out here playing or showing you the ropes or showing you how to catch a football or showing you these things, but I'm going to take this opportunity to begin to engage with you from a patriarchal standpoint. And really, to me, when I say patriarch, it's like from a manhood standpoint, right? They're almost the same word to me. From a manhood standpoint, what it is to be a man in your community, to see a need and address that need. So I love that you guys are on that. But I do have, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, I think
where a lot of men struggle, and I'm not going to use your example, Bruce, because I don't know like anything about your father, but I have heard some people say, like I've asked some people, like, why aren't you involved in your kids' life? Because I'll keep it 100 with people, and when I have questions, like, you're out here doing, but why aren't you spending time with your kids? Like, why are you letting them kind of be off in their own and raise themselves? And I've had people tell me, I feel like my involvement with that kid will mess that kid up. So sometimes fathers abandon their kids because they think they're actually helping them when they don't really understand a lesson can be learned from the negative as well. It all depends upon how you share the info. So, but I think what we struggle with, and it kind of plays into your point, Billy, where your dad and my dad were similar in that regard. I think some people don't understand the difference between duty and a job.
Yep.
And a job
is something you do, and you could get disgruntled in a job. But a duty has the same makeup of a job, but you have honor and you have a respect for doing it. So you're more likely to get enjoyment out of it if you view it as a duty and not an obligation. So, for instance, I've seen fat dads where they're like, hey, go talk to him. Go talk to your son. And they're like, oh, here I go. I got to go talk to this. But then you'll have that don't need to be told that, hey, let me talk to him. And they take them on a ride. And I'm like, what's going on with that? Let's get to the bottom of it, because they actually understand the difference between duty and a job. So that's all I was going to say. But go ahead, Ro.
I think, sorry, Ro. But I think that being the situation I grew up in, I think the negative effect that's had is that now, like you said, manhood, we you have that in inherent desire to want to impart your wisdom, right? Well, I come from a situation where I didn't have anyone to ask. I didn't have any guidance, and so what that's done for my children, in a negative light, for real, is that because I didn't have a dad to ask and get any of this wisdom from, I am force feeding my children all of the wisdom, right? Like, and I tell them all the time, I wish I had. I'm gonna be the dad for you guys that I wish I had, right? And I know it might leave some scars because parenting is going to leave scars, and I try to apologize to my children as often as I can because I'm far from perfect, right? But it's weird how the lack of, whatever my father was supposed to provide has made it the hyper drive of what I'm trying to do. And my children, they're fantastic. I mean, they're not perfect either, but there has been left scars, and that's stuff that I almost cussed. That's stuff that I think about all the time. And my wife says little things to me that remind me, she always says, we're in a world that is no longer here. We were trying to prepare them for a world that we thought we were raised into, and how that constantly changes. And I think that sometimes, like you said, Billy, knowing when to let it kind of ride, let it go, and wait for them to figure it out themselves. And then that battle with, man, nobody's tried to stop me from doing all the dumb shit that I went out and did. And now I'm just trying to, it's like a juggling act. I got them live. I got to let them grow up, but I got to provide. I got to protect. And I see what's coming down the road. Man, it's rough, but I love it. And then Tim, to tie it in, I know I'm word salading, but to tie it in, but that's the duty of it. Like, as much as it stresses me out, and as it, okay, well, y'all ain't gonna listen. I ain't gonna say nothing. As many times I've said that, it's never a thing because I love being their dad, right? Like, as much as I want to shut the hell up and just let y'all bump your head against the wall, I can't, because I love being your father, and I love being the one that you're gonna come and they talk to me about all kinds of crazy shit. We have all the discussions, right? And I just try to give them the best advice that you can give them. And I don't know. I love it. Love it. Duty. It's my duty, and take that shit seriously. Like, it's my why. It's the reason why I'm doing this. So I like
so here's what I'll throw at you real quick, and then I'll toss it back to Ro. Where I've gotten very comfortable just sort of observing and then knowing my space in the world is the mother gets celebrated in the moment. We get celebrated after the fact, and we got to be okay with that. Like, if you're a good dad, you're going to be cried about at your funeral. But my dad was so much, I wish I could have my dad right now. The moms kind of get that reassurance throughout that. And it's probably for the better that way, if I'm being honest.
Agreed.
You'll notice that if you pay attention. Like,
you're absolutely
a good dad,
Tim,
they get remembered.
As someone who didn't have a mom either, I tell my kids all the time, you are very lucky to have your mother. And I make sure I reinforce the special bond that they have, because moms provide some shit. I tell them all the time, if you didn't have your mom, this whole situation would be different, because they connect on a level that I'll never be able to reach because I didn't have it, right? And then for two, I'm not an emotional creature like that. I'm more logic based. Let's fix the problem, right? But moms, and that's why they get loved in the moment. At least I'm only going to speak for my wife and my children's relationship with her. The reason why she gets and deserves that love in the moment, because my wife will sit there with you in that moment. As dad is trying to get you through it. Hey, hold on. Yeah, this moment sucks right now. Here's how we get past it. That's.
We're willing as fathers to let them go through some tougher stuff. I mean, not to turn it into a joke or anything, but look at Friday. Pops was like, let him be a man. Let him be a man. If Pops didn't let him be a man, she comes in and steps in the way, and he just got whooped by Debo. He'll be getting whooped by him next week. But because he let him be a man and get up and show some and get tough, Debo will never mess with him again. So
I'm with it. Really quick, I want to bring this in from the chat. I had asked, what does the patriarch role mean to you? Bobby Sis Jr., my cousin, says the leader, provider, the coverer, and protector. He is to be a flesh image of the Lord. And then he follows up and says, this is why these types of men forums are essential. Although women can listen to the words you say, but they do by default can't offer viable and tangible solutions because they are not men. And I think that goes back to what you were saying, Bruce, from the aspect of we are trying to get you through it versus sitting with you in it. And maybe we can get better at sitting with you in it. But I'm be honest, I just feel like as men, we are wired to be like, yo, I'm gonna just get you through this. And it's interesting because my wife and I went to a comedy show this past weekend, and the comedian was like, yeah, I had this girlfriend and we were getting ready to break up, but she kept saying my communication was bad. And he was like, so I started like looking at all this research on communication. And he said, and I finally came across this communication guru who seemed to understand women. And he was like, and what he told me was something that I knew and something that women had told me before, but it didn't make sense until a man told me. He says, he told me that women, when they're telling you something, they don't want you to offer them a solution. They just want you to listen to them. And I think that goes to that skill set that they have as women to sit with you in the moment. They're sitting with you in the moment, not looking to offer you a solution. I don't know if you want to call it ADHD, lack of patience, or whatever you want to call it in men, but our ability to sit in the moment is very finite, like almost non-existent. Because it's like
they help process, we help execute.
Right.
I'm a fixer. If you come to me with a problem, my brain, how do we fix it? It's gotten me this far. If I had any time to sit in my book, well, okay, maybe I'd be a more emotionally stable, emotionally stronger, more self-confident if a younger Bruce would have had time to sit in these moments, analyze and figure them out and all of that. But society ain't never made it that easy for men, especially. I mean, I'm only speaking from my situation. I didn't have time to sit in it. Bro, we have to fix this problem. How are we going to eat tomorrow, Bruce? Are we going to sit here in this? Or are we going to find a way to, figure out how to put some food on our back and make it to school the next day? You know what I mean? So, but I like what you said, maybe should we as men practice that more? I'll be able to do that now as on this journey, figuring out more about me, because now I feel like I have more time, more established. We've done figured some things out. The kids grown on their way out my house. I got more Bruce time. Would it have been more beneficial for my wife and my children and all of my brothers and people that I connect with every day? Would it have been more beneficial for me to practice that maybe earlier? For sure.
Right. No, I agree. So this all brings me to this question that I've had for a while, though, is who was the patriarch in your family when you were growing up? Like, who was that guy, right? That exuded the charisma, the charm, the connective tissue, that connective element that I was speaking about in the beginning. Who was that person in your family? Because I'll be honest, in my family, there's nobody that I can point to as that guy. Like, you were the Neo of the family. And there were tons of men in our family. And one of my cousins is on here right now. And I'm sure, because our generations, he's like a generation before me. Look, I was getting ready to say, I am sure in his experience, he had that guy. In my experience as the second generation after him, I didn't have that experience. And so he immediately put my dad was. And I know that about my cousin, number one, because he was somebody that I looked up to when I was a little, when I was considered Little Bill. He was somebody that I looked up to. But I also know in my own experience, there really was nobody that I could just say, this was that guy. I think the closest I came to that was my grandmother's my grandmother's husband, which would have been my step-grandfather. He poured a lot into me, and I seen how he tried to keep his family connected and our family connected. But there were shortcomings that even he had that were like, yo, there's some things that you're doing that are kind of eroding the work that you're putting out there. So you're putting out the glue, you're in the factory making all the glue, and then you put the glue down and then you erode the glue. That's counterintuitive. So for you guys, who was the patriarch in your family when you were growing up?
Tim, I'm gonna go because it's gonna be quick. Absolutely nobody. My dad showed me how not to be, and that was a strong lesson for me. And then for me, it was like comic book fictional superheroes, anime. Let me find my guiding light. Let me find out who I'm being, how I'm supposed to be a man. Because my grandfather, he was my step grandfather, and he was uneducated. So he was a good human being. He was actually 100% the best human being I've ever met, but he wasn't leading the family. He was doing what he was told, right? So I didn't have it. There it goes.
Gotcha.
I'm truly the
definition of it takes a village, because it was kind of, I had different resources. So my dad was in the house, but my dad was the authority figure and the provider. We didn't have mushy moments. You know what I mean? Like I used to watch TV shows and think, man, that's all fake. You know what I mean? Like when I was a little kid, like, growing pains, ain't nobody got a Mr. Seaver. That ain't real. You know what I mean? My dad was more Al Bundy than that. You know what I mean? But who was big in my life, who took the mantle for that, was my older brother, who's since passed, my brother Johnny. He did so much that I actually created that term for my nephews, and you need to be the Donnie to him. That's your responsibility now. Because he had that much of an impact on me. And my brother taught me everything from riding a bike to shooting a ball to throwing a ball to how to approach and talk to a girl, how to apply cologne correctly. All these things. And he would have talked to me. And the thing that if I could talk to him today, I'd be so grateful for, is that he used his examples of imperfection to steer me away from falling into the same traps. Like he would tell me, you don't. I was like, man, I used to tell him, like, yeah, I want to be like you. He's like, you don't want to be like me. Here's why. And he would lay out his issues and the demons he was facing. He's like, you don't want that. I want better than that for you. That's why I'm willing to tell you about everything that's wrong with me. And then I had my grandfather, who happened to move into the house when I was like 12. And I used to go in there and sit with my grandfather. He would give me all this knowledge about how the world was before, and how his relationships failed with my grandmother, and then his next wife, and his third. He was married like 5 times. So he would tell me like where all of them went wrong. And so I was kind of getting it from all over the place. And to your point, Bruce, also from fictional characters. Uncle Phil taught me stuff that I didn't get. You know what I mean? Same thing with Cliff Huxtable. These people you see on TV, the Danny Tanner from Four. I remember their names because they gave. I was like, man, I wish my dad would talk to me like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember there's times where, as a kid, I'd yell at Theo or Eddie Winslow, because I'm like, man, your dad cares about you. I'm like 10 years old thinking this, like, because I was so starved for some of that I recognized what they were getting when they didn't even recognize what they were taking it for granted because it was always there. So I'm truly a product of fake people, comedy writers, my brother, my grandfather, and my dad, all kind of providing that. So yeah, I guess there's no one way to help a person grow.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you would say that, because as you're saying these people's first and last name, and I know they're all fictitious characters, it's like, but that example was a real example for you. So
that old wrestling meme where he's like, it's real to me, damn it. Hey, they were real to me, damn it. You know what I'm saying?
But
when I found out the actor that played Uncle Phil died, that shit hurt.
Right. Like, J. Cole says that in one of his songs. Like, Uncle Phil was basically the only male role model that he knew. This fictitious character. So I think it's interesting because I didn't go into like the fictitious characters. I didn't even think about the fictitious characters. I was watching G.I. Joe and He-Man and Thundercats and Silverhawks. Like
Beast Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Like Optimus Prime. That's not a character that I'm gonna model manhood after, even though he's this leader, right? But for me, what I did do, even though I didn't have a patriarchal, I'm going to use that word, whether it's right or wrong, patriarchal figure in my home or in my immediate family, what I did do is I reached out often to other men. So like when I started going to church, I reached out to other men that I seen that I thought were maybe doing some of the things that I needed. And my godfather, who's since passed away, he passed away 2 years ago. He was one of those men for me that just, he taught me so much in such a short period of time, like a very short period of time, and in a chaotic period of my life. Like during 16, probably 14 through 16, and maybe even 17, my life was in chaos. If I wasn't thinking about committing suicide, if I wasn't running away, if I wasn't chasing after some girl, like it was like, good Lord, I don't know how I made it, to be honest. But
your brother calling a bomb threat to your job to get you out of work.
Right. If I wasn't having Tim trying to get me out of work so I could go and do, I didn't know what the heck we were doing that day. I just didn't want to be at work for whatever reason.
Hood rat things. That's what we were doing.
So it's like all these different things that I didn't have access to. I knew I had a longing and a yearning for it. And now when I look at where I'm at in life now and the role and responsibility of being the patriarch, and which is for me, again, it's not just in my immediate family. It's like, okay, in my immediate family, in my extended family on my side of the family, and in my extended family on my wife's side of the family. That's where the challenge is. It's like, yo, you just this newcomer. You don't know the highs and the lows that we've been through here, and you're trying to be the patriarch. Yeah, I'm gonna have to be that. I'm gonna have to be that because I'm willing to step into that role. Because one of the things that I understand in the role of the patriarch is when we are in this space where we are able to be the patriarch and people begin to come to us for that wisdom and begin to come to us for that advice and begin to come to us for that glue, right? When they begin to come to us, all of a sudden they start realizing that they want to be a part of the glue factory and not a part of the acetone factory. And they start naturally moving towards collaborative efforts to keep the family together and keep the family whole. Really quick, I want to bring in, because my other cousin, Brian, it's funny, a cousin from my mom's side, a cousin from my father's side. My cousin Brian says, unfortunately, none. I knew those men I didn't want to emulate. Those experiences, I painfully learned to be the man I am. Oh, I think it's maybe through those experiences, I painfully learned to be the man I am today. So again, when I say there wasn't a lot, and he's a generation ahead of me as well. When I say there was not a lot, there was not a lot. And then my cousin Bobby says, whether you all believe it or not, all of you have had a patriarchal role model. You were either taught positive attributes or negative attributes. The fact is you were taught. True, because I believe all of our behaviors are learned behaviors, right? We come in knowing nothing. We're blank templates. And then we slowly but surely compile the story of experiences to be able to understand either where we want to go, what we want to do, and all those things in between. But from that teaching of what not to do, I guess because for me, I'm the person who's like, yo, if I'm not really rocking with you and that's not what I want to be, I'm probably not going to be around you. And so like, I think about like my grandfather, right? I know I was at his house a couple times as a child, probably, I want to say like maybe 20 times as a child that I was at his house. And he was alive until I was like 19, 20 years old. So we'll say one time a year, but it wasn't one time a year, but 20 times in my lifetime, I was at my grandfather's house. But in the moments where I was at his house, one of the things I learned was there was food for adults and there was food for kids. So imagine you're waking up and you're going to breakfast. I actually remember we were on a family trip one time, and we were all staying at this cabin in Tahoe. And when we went, it was like, okay, my parents were like, we're going to stop and grab a whole bunch of snacks and keep them in our trunk because I don't like the way they do things with the kids here. Okay, whatever. And then when we woke up for breakfast, it was like, all right, you guys get Special K, no sugar, with milk, cereal, and we're going to have bacon, pancakes, and eggs. Wait, what? And I remember my mom being like, yo, my kids are eating whatever the hell I'm eating, right? So either we're eating bacon, pancakes, and eggs, or we'll go out to breakfast. Our family will just go out to breakfast. But I remember in that moment learning, like, yo, my kids are going to eat whatever I eat. Now, granted, I don't like, my wife and I have been to the Salt Bays restaurant in Vegas, right? That's an expensive bill. My wife and I go there as like a special treat for us to go. We ain't bringing the kids to that because it's like goes from a $400 bill to an $800 bill. I'm not about to do that. But if we're at home and we're cooking, there's really not much that our kids can't have that we're having, because I want them to have a fond memory of, oh, my dad used to make steak on the grill or ribs or whatever, right? They have that fond memory, and it wasn't like, oh, he made those ribs and I remember they smelled so good, but we never got to eat one. Like, nah, oh, thank you, cousin. I didn't see, again, things that I don't know, but the aspect of what I wanted my kids to remember was my dad didn't treat himself better than he treated us. He treated us the same way he was willing to treat himself. Now, granted, that goes only so far because they don't have jobs. So it's not like, oh, you want a new Ferrari? Well, I'm going to buy you a new Ferrari. See, cousin, I thought you was on that trip, but I wasn't sure. But at the same time, that patriarchal role to me in that moment where I'm this kid and I'm seeing this happen, as the patriarch, if I'm in that role now, I'm like, hey, look, the kids eat what we eat. I mean, Tim has been to my house in Utah with his kids for barbecues. It's not like I grill hot dogs and hamburgers for the kids and we're eating tomahawk steaks and ribs. That's not how I get down. It's like, yo, this is what I made. This is what we have. Don't be so greedy that nobody gets any, but everybody's welcome to what we have, right? And so as I'm in that patriarchal role, that is a role where I'm like, here we share the resources that we have to the extent to where nobody feels like they are less than or not worthy of the same quote unquote treatment. So interesting that you guys pulled that from fictitious and Tim, I like the village concept, pulling it from different parts of the village. But for me, going back to what my cousin Bobby said, there are some things that I learned that I immediately was like, yeah, no, that's not how I want to be the patriarch and show up as the patriarch in my family. Anything else before I move on to the next thing?
I was just going to say
it's really interesting when you look at what you just talked about, like the differences people have with, like, it's almost like they've been conditioned because of what they went through, that the kids have a rites of passage they have to pay when the kids ain't really have a say in it. So it's really, I think it's really, like, I know I said I look for a partner, but I'm not
ignorant
to the truth of, even if you have a partnership as a patriarch, if the thing goes in the shitter, you're going to be the blame. You're the patriarch. You're the even your partner, if something goes wrong, they're going to turn to you like, what do we do? You know what I mean? So you got to understand that going into it. It's kind of a thankless job, but one of the duties of it is knowing those things and taking a stand. Like, these are okay. This is what we've been doing. This is we ain't doing that no more.
Right.
Not on my watch. Things are gonna. And it's funny. The more you think about the role of a patriarch, the more you start thinking of like a tribal chief.
And the chief doesn't have to
be involved in every little decision.
But sometimes the
chief has to step in and make change. And it's
right.
and I think about, like, when you said how when you start putting that energy in, like when you show up in a family and it's lacking and you start putting that energy there, that usually people start reciprocating that energy and they start taking it. I think that plays into our competitive nature as men. And you start seeing, oh, he could do it, I could do it. Oh, then you start, playing up to the level of what it is. So those are just my initial thoughts I wanted to get out. I don't know if Bruce had anything.
Well, no, it was just it was a great point, and it's something that I think about all the time in terms of when I was younger living with my grandmother. She used to always tell us, when you're 18, you're moving out, kicking you out. Hurry up and turn 18, get out of my house. And I think that was one of the first things I knew was not going to be a thing. No matter how much I've said it, no matter how, like, my kids know, I tell them all the time, you're not hostages. Y'all don't have to stay here. Y'all can figure it out and move on. But I also tell them I would never kick you out, right? Like, I've done that. I've been there. That was the thing. Like, and I grew up knowing that, because grandma had raised her child. She didn't want to raise. She didn't want me and my sister, and she made it very known. But that it's funny how, just hearing you say the fact, your mom saying my kids are going to eat whatever I eat, and just that sticking with you. The one for me is, my daughter's 20. She's just now talking about moving out. Truth be told, I don't think she's ready, but she grown. She got a great job. She want to do what she want to do. Go out there and see the world. No, I don't want none of your stuff that's in your room. Please take all that shit with you. But yes, this is still going to be your room if you ever need to come back. But don't go out there and act stupid and come back to it now. Go out there and handle your business. Stay for a while. See the world a little bit.
But don't live
that safety net is there. Just know that it's there. Like, don't go out there and be like, I ain't paying those bills. If things go wrong, I get evicted. Oh, well, I'll go back to my dad's. Like, don't be that.
Yeah,
don't be that, because it's gonna take you a while to get back out on your feet if you do that.
Right. And I'm making it upon your return. I'm making it super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That is like we've had this conversation where the kid, like, that's something that's a cultural thing, right? Like, we grew up in the culture where that clock gets put on us. Now we're not enjoying our teenage years. We're seeing a running sand of, I got to make some moves because it's going to be feast or famine. You know what I mean? I'm going to sink or swim out in this world. And it kind of takes the discovery part out of it. And so we've had those conversations with our kids, but it's the same thing gets communicated. Like, look, you always have a home here, but you got to understand there's things you could do in your place you won't be able or feel comfortable to do in ours. There ain't gonna be some dude coming through my front door setting off my ring alarm at 2 a.m. talking about he coming to pay you a visit. Nah, he gonna visit the morgue.
Right, he might be paying a hotel room.
Right, he better become. This ain't that type of party.
Right,
and for the most part, I think you wouldn't want that anyway. Like, it's funny how that works, though, because the kids that get that reassurance, they tend to want to leave quicker. And then the ones that don't, they want to stay longer, it just seems like. But yeah, I'm back to you, Ro.
No, I actually had that experience with my oldest son, and I was very upfront with him. Like, yo, when you turn 18, you have to go. And it wasn't because, oh, you're 18 and now you got to go because I want to live my life. It was like, yo, the level of disrespect that you have for me, I'm only willing to tolerate it while I'm responsible for you. But you're not going to be able to have that level of disrespect at 18 because you turn 18 after you graduate, sir. So it's summer. You can go. And what he ended up doing was going to the Marines because he was like, shoot, my dad is not playing. He's like, you can't stay with me because you're putting me in a space to where I might get arrested in my own house for beating you up. So that's not going to work well for me. So I'm going to let you, since you know so much, I'm going to let you get out there and get at it, pimp. And though it was hard, and it's funny because when he went to the Marines, dude, my wife will tell you, I was an emotional wreck for probably a month. Like, we'd be sitting on the couch. I don't even know what we'd be watching. I was just kind of numb for a while. But we'd be sitting on the couch and tears would just be rolling down my face, dude. Like, I get emotional just thinking about it right now. But it was one of the hardest things I had to do. But I knew overall at the end of the day, I needed to show my son that, hey, look, I'm happy to be here for you. but I'm not happy to be here for you at this level of disrespect. You're going to have, going back to that fun or reverence, right? You're going to have a certain level of reverence for me as your father. And now our relationship, where everybody was like, oh, he's going to hate you, he's not going to talk to you for the rest of his life, blah, 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 blah. My son and I talk every Sunday, 4 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock his time, every Sunday.
The difference is, though, you didn't come at him when he was 10 years old with this ticking clock. No. It built up to where it had to be his motivation to change. You know what I mean? You went and checked every box before you went to that, before he pulled out the sledgehammer. You know what I mean? Yeah. The rubber mallet wasn't getting it. You know what I mean? The ball peen hammer wasn't getting it.
Not only that, Billy, also, as a young man, I knew when I was fucking up. Your son had to have known. There's a level of respect that's always going to be garnered for your actions. And when he looks at his father, like, yo, I was bugging. If there's any part of self-accountability, that young man knows, damn, Pops was right. And he has to know how much time. I mean, y'all talk all the time. Y'all have a good relationship now. So he has to know that decision wasn't made lightly, right? You were doing exactly what you needed to do to help your son. And your son knew that. He might not have wanted to accept it in the moment, but like you said, now like clockwork, every Sunday, there's a routine of you and your son having conversations on a level that would have never, ever got there had that respect. It had to find its way. It had to, because you know everything, because that's what they do, right? It had to find its way. And kudos to you for, and what is it? Tough love, love language, all that shit, call it what you want to. But when you're doing something for someone that you love and you're genuinely doing it because you love them and want to see better for them, it resonates, dude. It resonates for sure.
Right.
I so much hate that term tough love because I think it's not, I hate the term. It's I hate the lens of which is looked at through foreign eyes or a third party's perspective, because some people think that we actually want to give people tough love. They don't understand, like what you said, how you just be sitting there and the tears come up. They don't understand that when the sacrifice it takes to give tough love, it almost assuredly always crushes you. And being willing to make a decision or have to enforce things that you know are going to crush you by doing them because you feel it's in the best interest of saving your son, it gets wrapped up in the bow of like, oh, he's the drill sergeant. It's tough love a little bit too easily for me. And I like when you understand it fully and you know what you're giving up, because you in your moment you took a gamble. You didn't know that it was going to turn around. Me and you talked, and I was like, I always knew it was going to turn around, but I didn't know it was going to be that quick. You know what I mean? I was talking about like, hey, 25, 26, 27, he's going to be coming up to my dad. I wish I would have listened, but it was way sooner than that. And I think a lot of that is when you're in the Marines and being a former service member, and you're in these training exercises, a lot of downtime, no phone to scroll through. You have a lot of time to process things that you've done with your life, that decisions that led you to this point. And I bet you he replayed it like, man, like you said, Bruce, man, I was bugging. I could have listened here. And why did I let this get to this point? This dude literally told me how everything was going to turn on. He's been right. Now he's making up for it by like, hey, what he wasn't doing when he was your responsibility, he's doing now. He's listening and he's respecting. So sometimes it takes a while for him to come around.
Right. Bruce, I see your message, man. Final thought for you before you take off. Bruce has to jump a little bit early today.
Okay, so final thought. My final thought is not as much to do about the actual topic. It's just more to do about the space. I'm so glad we are back for season 4. I don't care if I got to move stuff around. I'm just trying to be committed to being on this panel because this is therapy for me. I just want to say thank you. My final thoughts are thank you, Billy, for your shared stories, your shared perspective. Thank you, Tim, for your shared stories and shared perspective. Yet again, something to leave with, something to grow on. And that's why this is important, because there's always something for me to leave with and chew on. And from the chewing, I get to growing. And so I don't know. Just thank you guys. I'm sorry I had to cut out early, but duty calls.
No, I understand, brother. We'll catch you on the next session.
All right, guys.
All right, peace. So the next question that I had that I wanted to bring was really what impact does having no or the wrong guidance play in becoming the patriarch? Because like my cousin Bobby said, he was saying that, you either learn one way or the other, right? But sometimes we glean to that guidance, and it's always been strange to me because, I think both of us are really big on fatherhood and manhood and fatherhood, but my dad wasn't there for me, so I don't need to be there for my kids. Wait, what? Like, no, you know what it felt like for your dad not to be there for you, so why would you not be there for your kids, right? But I want to ask that question from the perspective of what does that impact look like when you have that wrong guidance, and how does that impact you in the patriarchy? And I want to ask you specifically because you talked about your brother Donnie in regards to him sharing his flaws and his imperfections and saying, here's why you don't want to be like me. You're on mute.
To me, there's a layer
To that, right? So is it somebody guiding you through that example, or are you perceiving it and picking it up on your own? Because if you're picking up on your own, that leaves gaps, and you have to fill those gaps. And it can create biases and things like that. So that's the impact it has on that. Now, the impact on not having any guidance in a specific area means that you're going to have the trial and error that you got to experience, or you may experience. The problem with that is there's some decisions you can make that can drastically alter your life. So that's the risk. So there's huge risk. There's huge risk that you can't even really comprehend. I'm a Raider fan, so I'll use a guy that was on the Raiders. They had a player named Henry Ruggs. By all accounts, a good kid, good dude. And he got drunk one night, drove his car really fast, hit a car, killed the woman on impact. That was in the car. He was doing like 100. He was coming from the Top Golf in Vegas, so that nice little straight shot.
Yeah.
He was just driving crazy. He didn't have the guidance. So he experienced it on his own. Unfortunately for him, it wasn't like, man, that was a close call. I'll never do that again. Nah, he's in jail. And he'll be there for at least, I think, another 8 years or something. So that's a pretty significant impact. There's other things. You don't have these ideas. You don't know things. Maybe you don't know what runs in your family. Maybe the addiction runs in your family. So you had nobody talk to you about drugs. You try something, you have a bad addiction because your family's more prone to addiction. And it costs you years, health, everything that you're trying to reach. So there could be some pretty catastrophic impacts. Relationships, because you don't have the guidance. But that wrong guidance, there's two types of people. Like you pointed out one of them, right? Why does he get to have a dad when I didn't have one? Screw that. He'll be all right. There's people that use what's happening to them as an excuse. And there's people that learn from that example and strive to be the opposite or better.
Right.
I know he left, but I would classify Bruce in that regard. Bruce went out and said, I want to be the opposite of what I received.
Right.
And those are real, not everybody's built like Bruce. Not everybody's built like me and you. There's a lot of people looking for outs. They're looking to get over on the system. So to me, those are the impacts, man. If you got somebody guiding you with the wrong, like he would always point out to me, he's like, see, he would point out a cousin. He was like, what do you think of him? And I'm like, seems like he seems like he's having a great time, a great life. And he was like, man, that dude, he's been in jail twice. His kids don't talk to him. He drinks himself to sleep every night because he can't handle the pain, but he puts on this face to fool everybody. Is that what you really want to be? And it's like, damn, I didn't think about it all like that. So you have that guided experience, because if you don't know that, you may say, hey, if I drink a lot and have a good time, everybody's going to like me like they like so-and-so.
Right.
And then you go down the dark path. So it's
to me, and then, but
At the same time, you could learn from seeing bad examples too. But what that ends up doing is it sometimes you put too much panic behind those things and you overreact to every little thing because you think it's going to lead to this big event. Like,
Right.
oh, you my kids that you can't go to parties because they might end up a dope fiend. Like you jump to these crazy conclusions. You know what I'm saying? And so you end up being a helicopter parent, or you're not allowing them, and then they feel. The thing about a helicopter parent is that you'll ensure that they make it to adulthood, but what you don't realize is you'll create little resentments from your kids towards you because they're going to feel like you stopped them from experience and stuff. So
Right.
it creates an imbalance, is what I'm getting at. And
Yeah.
then what happens is you spend a big chunk of the middle of your life, mid 20s to 50s to up to 50, figuring out how to balance and correct these imbalances, and getting the level out. Well, I know we're talking about the sledgehammer, the mallet, and all, now another tool. You bring out, now you got to bring out the level and level everything out in your life. And it takes you decades to do it because you're
Right.
so imbalanced because you didn't have that guidance. So,
that's
Yeah. No, you actually bring a really good point in the aspect of, I think, a crucial element of the patriarch role, or the patriarchal role. The best way I can put this is, and I forgot this young lady's name. She was the lady who was supposed to run in the Olympics and then got disqualified because she had a marijuana test that popped positive.
Richardson, yeah.
I knew her last name was Richardson. I couldn't remember her first name. So I think about this, and I remember having this conversation with one of my friends. He's one of my accountability partners. But I was like, man, she didn't have nobody in her corner to be like, yo, maybe you shouldn't hit this blunt because you're a Olympian and that's not going to work in your favor. Like, you didn't have nobody to hold you accountable and say, hey, look, you might be pissed at me right now, right? That moment versus the future planning that we're trying to get you to. You might be pissed at me right now, but I'm not going to let you smoke because it's going to cost you too much to smoke. And inevitably it did. You couldn't run in the Olympics. So when you were in your prime, when you were hot, when you could have got it done,
you're always going to have that.
What if now?
Right. You didn't get the opportunity. And so it makes me think, no matter if the impact is going to be negative or positive and it's the wrong guidance to your patriarchal path, having people who hold you accountable, right, are extremely important. And I mean, I'm dealing with that right now with my middle son, who has decided that he wanted to move back with his mother. He's not doing well in school. And part of that patriarchal role is going back to saying, okay, I can either try to force you or I can let life teach you. And I've decided at this point to step back and allow life to teach him. So like, we're talking to his psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is like, are you talking to him about school and his grades? No, I don't talk to him about that because it creates an unnecessary tension on our relationship, and it's not conducive. Yeah, it's not conducive to building the bond that I inevitably want us to have. Now, part of that bond is fractured because of the fact that it's like, hey, look, once you do certain things to me, I don't care if you're my kid, if you're my mama, if you're my daddy, if you're my wife, if you're my best friend. Once you do certain things to me, some of those roads you can't backtrack. You can continue on the road, but you can't backtrack and fix that part. That pothole exists. And so for me, when I think about the patriarchal role, I think about how important it is to have accountability partners, but also not just have cheerleaders. Like, you do need some cheerleaders. Don't get me wrong. There's days where, where I've been down, whether I'm going through something with my wife, going through something with my kids, going through something with my life, and you and I have a conversation. And it's like, hey, I think this is what's taking place. And you give me perspective and insight that maybe because I'm emotionally compromised or emotionally frustrated and happy or sad, I can't glean that perspective alone. So there's times where you hold me accountable and then I have to go back and think and be like, no, I don't think that was it. Or, yeah, I do think that was it. But other times, there's times where like, hey, man, this is just a moment. You're going to get through it. And that's that cheerleader moment. But you need a balance of that when you're in a patriarchal role, because like you said, making that tough decision with Z, like, yo, I got to set this hard line and say, when you turn 18, homie, that's a wrap. All this disrespect that you've been allowed to do because you're my child, I love you. I'm not going to put you out on the street and make you be homeless at 17, but at 18, you got to go, because I know that it's a better situation for you to go at 18, for you to be the prodigal son to return at 25, right? I know that that's the better decision for you. And in the reality is for the entirety of that boy's life, I have always done what was best for him, even if it was at the mercy of what would have been best for me. Like, I had him when I was 21 years old. And by the time he was 18 months, I was a single parent with him. So how easy it would have been to be like, yeah, go and stay with your mama. I'm about to go and live my best life, kid free. It would have been easy, but that wouldn't have been what was best for him. And having people, even when I left California to move to Utah, I had plenty of my guy friends calling me, so, hey, what's the plan for you to still be involved in the boys' life? You're moving to Utah, get that opportunity. There's an opportunity for you to make money and make a better life, which would inevitably impact the boys, which is great. But what's your game plan for being involved in their life? And that was, like, again, that accountability, even though I was already coming back plenty of times to come and visit the boys. And just until, I've been here 7 years. And just until recently, I'm now not going back to California, but the boys are coming here to visit. It's just recently that took place. And that's more of a financial, what makes more sense financially to do. Does it make sense to travel and then do nothing and not even see the boys? Or does it make sense to have them come here and have finances when they come here to do things with them? And so that accountability when it comes to being a patriarch, when it comes to being glue, it's really, this is going to sound interesting, but it's really the currency in which the patriarch operates is an accountability. Like, I'm working with my brother-in-law now, like, hey, look, there's some things that are going on that have gone on in our family. And I need you to partner with me to help create that cohesion again. You with me or no? Yes or no? I need to know if you're with me or not. That's accountability that then operates as currency between he and I, to where I could say, hey, look, you said you're willing to put in on this, right? You're willing to go 50-50, 25, 75, whatever. You're willing to put on this. I'm expecting payment. And that payment is coming in the form of accountability. So that's what I got. Really quick, I want to bring in from the chat, my cousin Bobby just posted. He says, that's the burden of being the patriarch. Monarchs normally would not make that decision unless it was a matter of personal safety. Absolutely. I think personal safety, where we think in the terms of protections and provisions as men, right? Women think of the form of nurturing and mental health. There's been plenty of times, I'm sure your dad even maybe said this to me, because I had all kinds of dads throughout the neighborhood. But it's like, they didn't care about our feelings. Like, I don't care how you feel. This is what it is. And I mean, it's hella funny to me, because I don't feel like we were abused as children by any means. But I remember being at your house, we're being loud, laughing at night, watching Evil Dead and all kinds of stuff, screaming in the fucking room. And your dad coming to be like, shut the fuck up. Like, yeah,
shut that shit up.
Right? We gotta really
turn it down.
Yeah, we gotta really tone it down right now, because Pops ain't even tripping. Pops is just like, yo, I'm trying to sleep and you guys are in here kickily cackling, right, like a bunch of little kids.
And part of him, there's jealousy there, because he didn't have that growing up. So it's like he just didn't, and I got to get up and go to work in the morning. He's over here, he don't even. And then you start creating the stuff. I catch myself doing this shit with Noah, which is, he's like, he doesn't even have the respect for me to keep it down. So, and it's like, again, were we intentionally trying to keep him awake? No, we weren't thinking outside that box.
Right.
But one thing I'll throw in, I love that, like, accountability will change your life. It's like the thing people avoid, but once they embrace it, good things happen for them. But the other thing I'll throw into you as well is, and what makes it tough is, as the patriarch, it's our responsibility to allow our family to fail sometimes and to learn from the failure and to understand that failure isn't a destination, it's just a stop on the journey sometimes.
Right. It's not the end of the
And
journey.
right. And I think where patriarchs and matriarchs differ is matriarch feelings and they're trying to protect you from the feeling of failure. Where we are more, we understand where the road's going. You're going to need this failure in your back pocket to know that you could rebound. Because
Right.
if you think life is punching you hard right now, my guy, you don't know
Right.
how hard life punches. Watch what happens when this happens, and then right at that same time, your car breaks down and you can't afford none of it. And then what are you going to do? That's what life puts you in.
And
Right.
all
No.
that nurturing
Ain't going to get it fixed.
No. And you know, it's funny because I remember when Z was doing the Crucible, and they had me send a letter to him before, and then I send a letter to him after, and I sent both letters at the same time. I sent the letter saying, "Hey, number one, I know you can do this. You'll get through it," and then I sent a congratulatory letter after because I was like, "I know my son; he's going to get through this." But one of the things I used to tell Ezekiel was like, "Yo, let me be very clear with you, sir. Nobody in the morning wakes up and says, how can we make Ezekiel's day better? That's your job. Like 100%, that is your job. You have to be the one to make yourself better, make your day better, make your life better. That is you." I said, "I'll be honest. And the reality is there's more people on this planet who don't give a shit about you than who do. Because there's billions of us. So the odds are easily that there's a ton more people that don't care about you than who do. Even if you have 50-50, that's still what 3.5 billion people don't give a shit about you." And so he goes into this crucible, and during the crucible, somebody had walked past him and their ammo can dropped on his foot. And he was like, "Dad, I thought my foot was broken. Like my foot hurt so bad." And he said, "And you know what? The person picked up their can and just kept walking. Like, and then other people were walking past me and nobody stopped and was like, 'Do you need help? Are you all right?' It was just me and the nighttime. And I got a deadline by the time I got to cross that finish line." And he was like, and in that moment, I thought, damn, my dad was right. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. And I think, especially as like, man, another thing, one of the things the comedian said, he was like, here's how much nobody cares, and specifically how much nobody cares about men. Women and children first. Men are a default acceptable casualty. Like, damn, ship going down, life boat deployed, women and children first. If we don't have enough room, it'll be the men who die. Which I'm not opposed to that, right? I don't feel like, well, no, I want to be on the boat and I want my wife to drown. I don't feel that way at all.
I feel like as men, we feel like we'll make it happen. Get them safe. I'll be all right. I'll find a way. You know what I mean?
I'll make a makeshift raft out of this dang life jackets and the swimming pool cleaning pole. Like, it don't matter to me. But I don't feel like, oh, well, I want to be first on that life raft. But what I do feel like is, as society, we have made it acceptable for us to be discounted about how we feel.
We allowed a line to be put in place, and now that line is going to keep moving and moving and moving. So now it's women and children first for survival. Now it's women and children first for, eating at the, they get on the plane faster or whatever. It's like, damn, okay, where does this line get drawn? And not everything's life or death. But it's funny because my dad, he didn't talk a lot to me, but he did drop the rare drool on me. And I remember I was probably like 10 or 11, and my dad was getting on my case, and I cried a big whoop to my mom, and my mom intervened and got it, like, protected me from my dad, and kind of like was like, you don't get on him like that. Da, 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 da. He's a little boy. And after the fact, my mom was in the kitchen cooking, and my dad was on the couch, and he gave me the look. He was like, and he gestured for me to go out to the porch, and we're sitting on the porch, and he's like, I need you to understand something. Tonight that worked. The crying thing worked. And that's because the world still sees you as a little boy. But there's going to be a time quicker than you think where the world's going to see you as a man, and nobody gives a fuck about a crying man. The world will walk right past you. Right. And he's like, want me to tell you how I know it's true? And I'm sitting there, and he's like, think about how many bums we walk by or we drive by. Does anybody stop and is like, oh my God, imagine if you seen a little kid pushing a cart, collecting cans. Everybody and their mom would jump out their car, be like, what's going on? Where's your parents? Where are you at? People care about children. When you become a man, your mom ain't gonna want to hear you crying.
Right.
For that. You ain't gonna no longer be the cute little kid that you are right now. So understand, when I'm getting on you about something, it's because I'm trying to help 18, 19, 20-year-old Tim. 10-year-old Tim ain't getting that help right now. And if you think you could keep crying your way to get that'll work. But man, by the time when it stops working, you're not going to be equipped.
Right.
And I say that I've give that speech to Noah. Like, listen, man. And I do it in a different way, a much softer way than my dad did. But I tell him something like, listen, man, here's the reason why I'm kind of hard on you. And I always give him the why behind when I get on him. Because I don't want him to leave anything up to interpretation. Is because when you go into that world, the world ain't going to give a damn about you as a man. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Like, there's programs. If you're in an abusive relationship, there's a woman's refugee thing. Like, women could call a hotline. Mm-hmm. I'm yet to be shown a hotline a man has been given.
Yeah, I think we had a session where we were talking about that, and we were talking about domestic violence. And when you search it, and you say, "My wife is hitting me" or something like that, it gives you all the things that she could be frustrated about that are causing this domestic violence case.
Right.
But then
this is all the reasons why it's your fault.
Right. But then when you do it for a woman who says, my boyfriend is beating me, it's like, call this number. You don't need to be in a domestic violence relationship. We can get you help today. I was like, yo, what, are you serious? Like, well, maybe she's stressed and maybe you did something that she's upset about. And it was like a bunch of different things. I was like, what the hell does that have to do with her trying to put her hands on me?
So that gives her license, is what you're saying, where she,
right.
I may have said something and she took it out and now she could just pop me. Okay. That's the world we live in now.
And then when you pop her back and she searches what to do, you're going to jail. I was like, that's wild to me. Really quick before because I forgot that was something that my cousin brought in. He said prisons are filled with men that chose to be emotional and never too much matriarchal influence and little to no patriarchal positive influence. And I think you meant had too much matriarchal influence. Oh, you did, because that's what you said after. And then you also said that was the best advice your father could have given you. And it's funny because it's advice that I have given my children, and it's most recently my middle son, where I was like, you can tell people, because he had told somebody that
thing to him when I was out there. When I talked to him, I said the same thing to him.
I don't get fed, and I was like, yo, first off, there's plenty of food in this house for you to eat. So I don't know why you would lead with that as your story. I don't get fed. Okay, well, you do. And now that CPS has come and investigated and found out that you do get fed, they'll come as many times as you say that you don't get fed while you're a child. But here's what I do know. Once you turn 18, nobody gives a shit if you ate or not. Nobody. Good luck.
It's CPS, not MPS.
Right. It's CPS. It's not MPS. It's not ADS. It's CPS, Child Protective Services, period. It's not adult protectives. It's not needs protective. At some point, the cute face, and I remember this when Ezekiel was a toddler, like between 3 and 4. We would be out in the grocery store and people would just walk up and give him money. Oh my God, your son's so cute. here's $3, here's $5, here's $2, here's $1. Like, people would just give this boy money. I was like, what the hell is this about? But I've been out with Ezekiel a couple of times since he's been an adult. I don't remember anybody walking up in the grocery store, giving him any money, asking him if he wanted a certain piece of candy or a certain nothing.
Now it's,
young man, can you reach that for me, or can you pick up that heavy thing and put it in my cart? Now it's a job. You got
right.
You utilitarian now.
Yeah. So I think about that, and all these things for me all play that role in the patriarch, because it's the lessons of going back to that wisdom that we need to leave behind. It's the wisdom that we're attempting to leave behind faster for the generation coming after us. I am very fortunate to have seen, and this is a weird word now that I think about fortunate, but I'm very fortunate to have seen so many different things be done the wrong way that it was like, yo, that's not the way. And some of the things that were done the wrong way that I adopted and was like, oh, that's how you do that. Then I turn around and I do that, and it's like, oh, those are the consequences from that? Yeah, F that. I'm not doing that again. That's stupid, right? And so it helps me build the things that I need in order to be the effective patriarchal leader in my family. And again, that's not just in the household that I occupy, but it's in all the spaces that I occupy in the family. One of the things that my cousin said, besides my mom being a gangster, in the beginning, I'm scrolling back up because I meant to start it.
I already knew that wasn't gonna vibe with like, I knew like your mom would say something. Your mom don't play.
Yeah, like
that ain't happening.
Yeah. He said this. He said you have a natural natural proclivity. Proclivity. There we go. Had to sound that one out. I knew the word, but I had to sound it out. You have a natural proclivity to function in your patriarchal position. I have naturally been a compassionate person, and this is an aspect of being a patriarch that I think is the male version of nurture, is compassion. And this is why I can make those difficult decisions where it's like, yo, you got to set this hard line with your son, and this hard line is going to fucking hurt you. It's going to hurt because you love and you care about your son, but you're compassionate enough to create this space now in order to hopefully forego consequences in the future, right? That is where I have learned to operate in my patriarchal role, is in compassion. I am a very compassionate person. I genuinely care about people. Don't get me wrong. My wife will tell you I can become very cold and stoic when necessary. However, my natural self, when it comes to nurture, I typically lay in the space of compassion. And I think about the patriarchal role that my father could have played, but inevitably abandoned. And I think about that in the aspect of who he was in the neighborhood, how well he was known in the neighborhood, how he would go fishing and provide fish for people in the neighborhood, how he would throw barbecues, right? And the family would come to his house and we'd all eat and gather there. And it was the moment where we were in this glue space. And somewhere along the road, he just got fatigued and was like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that anymore. I'm not hosting barbecues.
And theories. I think, like most men, what ends up happening is cars run on gas, men run on appreciation. And if you're not getting that appreciation, you stop wondering what's it worth, and you start becoming less willing to provide that. And it's funny, and as like the roles of the matriarch and the patriarch, it's this conversation is kind of clarifying it for me, where I feel like the matriarch's role is she helps provide protection in the moment, and the patriarch's role is we provide preparation for the future. And so we're willing to allow you to have a painful moment if it prevents a cataclysmic future. Right. The matriarch isn't always willing to do that. That's why like somebody put in the chat, that's why you see a lot of, especially young men, more emotional growing up, because if you look, they probably are lacking that patriarch type energy in their life. They only know the emotional in the moment energy.
Right.
React. But yeah, that's, man, it's like always, we're back with a vengeance, man. This is something for season 4.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't remember this as a child, but my mom told me this story about my father. And for from as far back as I can remember until I was 14 or I think 14, my father never disciplined me. He yelled at me, he lectured me, but he never physically disciplined me. If I got detention, if I got in a fight, if I got something happened at school, if I was fighting my sister or whatever, my mom was the disciplinarian. And she would always come in, discipline me, whip my butt. She'd come up to the school, whip my butt if she had to, right? But apparently, sometime between 2 and 3, I fell into this habit of chewing my food but not swallowing my food. So I would chew it to a liquid. Like, you give me a piece of chicken, I'd chew it until it was nothing but liquid. But then I wouldn't want to swallow it and I want to spit it out. And my mom, in the moment, my mom was like, okay, whatever. If you want to spit it out, spit it out. In the moment, that nurture, that, it's a phase, he'll grow out of it. And she took me to the doctor, and the doctor was like, look, he's chewing this shit so much, he's getting all the nutrients that his body needs.
Whether he realizes it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, but there was this one time where my family and we were at the movies, and I had got a king size Kit Kat bar. I don't remember this. My mom was telling me this story. I got this king size Kit Kat bar, and we're in the movies, and I'm chewing this king size Kit Kat bar until it's liquid. And then I'm telling my mom, like, Mom, I gotta spit this out. I gotta spit this out. She's like, just swallow it. Just swallow it. Just swallow it. And I'm like, I can't. I gotta spit this out. And so my dad, in his pissed off state, takes me to the bathroom because he's like, you're gonna swallow this food. And so he takes me to the bathroom, and she's like, I don't know what the hell happened in that bathroom, but when you came back, there was chocolate on you, chocolate on him, and from that day on, you started swallowing your food. And I can't tell you what happened because I was too young to remember what happened. But shortly after that, there was another moment where my father disciplined me. And I don't remember these moments, but there was a moment where my father disciplined me, and my mother, the nurturer and / protector of her, was like, yo, you went too far with our son. Don't put your hands on our son again. And so from whatever age that was until about 14, there was discipline. My mom would spank me, give me whippings, whatever, and then I'd be grounded and all that stuff. But it wasn't coming from my father. And then finally, when it did come from my father was when I was sneaking out in junior high school. And I'll never forget, because kids are funny. I remember I was sneaking, I snuck out, I got caught, I came back, and they were like, you got to go to school. So I went to school, and I'm like, they didn't give me a whooping, nothing. I'm talking big shit. Like, I snuck out, they didn't even do anything about it. And then when I got home, they were like, yo, you're grounded for 30 days, right? Oh, okay, whatever. So I snuck out.
Before when I snuck out, but okay. No.
Right. But then I snuck out while I was grounded, and I came back. And I will never forget. I think this is why I pay such close attention to detail. I came back, and we had a motion sensor light on the porch. I turned the light off before I left the house. I came back on that porch, and that light said click. I said, oh, shit. And before I could get off the porch, my dad had opened the door and said, come on in, Bill. Come on in. And I got maybe 1 foot in the house. And I remember my dad grabs me, he throws me in the house, and he's just yelling. He's like, you think you're a man? I'm going to beat your ass like a man. And he just, pow. He didn't turn his fist over, but he just, bam, right in the center of my forehead. And I remember just bells, like beep, felt like I walked into Thrifties or Rite Aid. And so I was like, dang. And I think about that moment, and it's like, man, you're not supposed to hit your kids like that. But then I also think about that moment as a father today, in the aspect, especially the neighborhood we grew up in. Here I am, I'm walking from Del Paso Heights over to the Manors at like 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, going through the bike trail and all these different places, walking on the levee through Hagenwood, all this stuff. And my life genuinely was in jeopardy, like genuinely in jeopardy, not like maybe in jeopardy. There was one night I was walking the bike trail and I heard this guy say to his friend, man, don't mess with that kid. Leave that kid alone. Here I am, a 7th grader or an 8th grader walking at night. I mean, you're not old enough to defend yourself at that point. I could have got kidnapped. I could have got stabbed. I could have got robbed. I could have got shot. All kinds of things could have happened. And so I say that story to say that, you know, sometimes when we disable our when we actively or allow someone to help us choose to disable our patriarchal role, we have this buildup. And this is what I would think is the other side of from being the glue, right, to being the acetone. Because it was like, oh, so imagine if I took that where you punch your kid in the head and I was to implement that today. Because it did, I ain't gonna lie, that helped me get the understanding that maybe I should not be sneaking out, because I didn't understand the danger out in the streets, but I did understand the danger of getting punched in the freaking head again by my dad. But we allow that pressure to build up to a point, in my father's case, to build up to a point to where it was like, yo, if I were to think about if I had a father who had maybe some emotional intelligence, he would think in the terms of, you know, though I want him to stop the behavior, that's not the way I should have went about it. And the potential of that creating this combative relationship. I mean, I've never thought about, I mean, when I was younger, you know, every kid, I hate it here. And then you like, I think I could take him. And then you're like, but I ain't gonna try it because I might die in the process. But it could have created this very combative nature between my father and I. Fortunately, it didn't, but it could have. And I think about how important that is for us as men when we are accepting of and participating in the patriarchal role, that we limit those acetone moments where we are not dissolving that glue or even risking dissolving the glue. Because I could have taken that as a completely different experience and never spoke to my father again, which is not going to help. And here now you have 3 grandchildren by me, and now you don't have any kind of relationship with me or them. So I think that's important. Really quick, my cousin said, because your mother was a gangster, that's why your dad held back. Yeah. My mom was wild. I'm not gonna lie, my mom was a little bit wild. And then my brother said, great Scott Batman, because I got punched in the head. And then my cousin said he held back. Absolutely, my father held back because I didn't realize how strong he was. It's no different though than my son being taller than me, and he's like, I still know the difference between grown man strength and my strength.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we're close to the end. What's your final thoughts, brother? You got anything to add before we close?
It's just, I think a lot of it has to be understanding and
Acknowledging where you're at and what strengths you are to provide when you're trying to be the patriarch of your family,
and accepting your limitations.
and knowing where you could outsource those things and partner with your matriarch. But
I kind of said it
what the matriarch is the energy in the moment to protect you in the protect your emotions in the moment, and the patriarch is to help, you know, protect you in the future and provide that knowledge in the future.
In our society today,
That gets villainized a lot.
and all those patriarchs out
There that know what I'm talking about, don't sacrifice what you're doing.
take it from
Billy's experience with Ezekiel, take it from, I have experience that I've shared in other things with my oldest daughter, where those relationships are thriving now, and they are a better place because they were prepared for the future, not protected from it. Because there's
Right.
nothing you can do. One of the
biggest things
and illusions we have as parents sometimes
is we have the illusion
illusion of control. Like we could actually control these kids. We don't. We influence at best.
Right.
influence.
Best is what you got. You
Waning
could say,
it.
"Oh yeah, not my kid. They're under lock and key." Man, those kids will do. You can't watch them 24/7. You got other things and other responsibilities. Trust me. Like Jurassic Park, those kids will find a way if they really want to do something bad.
Right.
So the
Illusion of control and the illusion of protection. Protection is something you can provide, but you can't guarantee.
Right.
When they need it most, you might not be there, and that's where we, as fathers and patriarchs, that's why we're preparing. That's why we're always trying to get our kids ready, because we know there's going to be a time we're not there, and we want to make sure that they're okay. Because protecting you from the moment and making sure you don't cry about it now ain't gonna do nothing when that bill comes due later.
Right.
You know, you're gonna cry and have that happen to you. So,
Exactly.
but the matriarch energy, that's not a negative thing. The matriarch energy is good, because if it was all one way, we as fathers we could turn everything into a life lesson,
Right.
and we could go real overboard with that, and we could really wear and damage some kids. That's why the matriarch energy is needed. The balance of that, it is definitely a scale of balance, and if you have both of those things, you're probably going to be a balanced person. If you don't, you're going to be searching for balance for a good chunk of your life. So that's kind of my final thoughts.
All right, brother. I appreciate that. I think for me, the final thought about the patriarchy really is it lends to something that you said. One of the words that came to my mind when I thought about the patriarchy was like toxic masculinity, right? How we are in this space of society where simply being masculine can be perceived as toxic by a certain audience. And the word patriarchy can be, the patriarchy, it's always about the chauvinist male, right? And the reality is that whether it's the monarchy or the patriarchy, when they are operating at their optimal performance, it's healthy for us as a society. And I agree with you in that aspect of having a balance of both. Too much logic, then you become this emotional or emotionless, I guess I should say, cyborg that doesn't have any emotions and everything has to go through logic. Too much emotion and you become this chaotic. Yeah, you become this chaotic creature who just can't seem to regulate making good decisions because they're always at the mercy of however you feel. And so I do think that both sides are needed, but that toxic perspective of the patriarchy, I think that as more men engage with it as the glue of their families, of their communities, of the spaces that they do have the influence in, I think that we could probably turn around that word patriarchy from being something that's perceived as negative in the aspect of
right,
male dominated, male controlled, to more of men partnering with creating the connections that are necessary for health and wealth in their families or in their communities.
We got to understand that we'll never fully replace that matriarchal energy. Like,
right. Oh yeah, no.
But I'm with you. I think a lot of that is if you can understand it and be willing to
set expectations.
Expectations and explain what's happening. Like, I bet you when your dad did that, when you snuck out, if he would have sat you and said, "Hey, now that you did, let's take a ride." And he's like, "Listen, you know I had to chin check you and to correct you because let me tell you what you put yourself at risk for."
Mhm.
And he laid all that stuff out to you. You were smart enough to connect it together, but there's a lot of people that aren't, that will
Right.
use that as an excuse of why their life turned. It was all because that night he hit me. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
excuse. People that look for excuses and people that look for improvement. Luckily for him, you were wired a certain way. But if he would have did that, where he's like explaining to you what was at stake, you'd have been like, "Damn, my dad did that because he loves me. He was willing to do that
Right.
because he loves me."
Put himself and his livelihood in jeopardy, because me surviving was more important.
Right.
And
Right.
and that's, you don't necessarily get that in the moment. And in the moment, I was like, damn, my head is ringing. And he hit me hard enough to know that if I hit his ass back, I'm not going to win that fight. Right. So,
There's another one of these that can come my way? No thanks.
yeah. I believe the retaliatory punch is a lot worse than the discipline punch. So,
Yeah. He had the audacity. You had the audacity to swing back. Oh, it reminds me of like my mom. Like my dad put hands on me one time, and when I look back on it, I deserved it because I disrespected him. He asked me to get him something. It was probably around the same age. I was like 7th, 8th grade. And he asked me he's like, "Hey, go get me a beer out the fridge." And in my head, I'm like, "Man, you lazy." I thought I was saying this in my head, but it came out. I said, "You lazy. You never want to get off that damn couch." And he was like, "Come again?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I heard you." He's like, "Come here." And I tossed him the beer and ran out the front door. Me and him played the car game. The car that was parked on the street. And every time we ran around. And then he hopped on the hood of the car and ran over the top, and I bolted towards DJ's house. And I hit a left on Nogales. And I stood away for a little bit, and I knew I couldn't go to DJ's because I knew he'd probably go there. And I was like, I could cut down all the way Nogales, go all the way down and see if Billy's home. And I was like, nah, I could cut through these backyards and sneak in my room, and this dude won't even notice. So I waited a little bit, and I was hanging out that abandoned church that's around the corner in Nogales. And I was like hanging around, heading back, peeking, seeing if he's coming, if he figured it out. And then like about 45 minutes to an hour goes by, and I hopped the fences to get back to my backyard because I always let my window crack when I was in the middle room. And I crept back in my bed. And if you remember when I was in that middle room, because the way in our family, you got promoted. Like as the kids moved out, you moved into the room further away from the parents. And I wasn't at that stage. I was still in the middle room. And if you remember that middle room, it had an extra bed for whatever random family member needed a place to crash, right? So I peek the window, I creep in, and I lay in my bed, and I just kind of like cozy in. And out the corner of my eye, I see that motherfucker sit up like the Undertaker. He just sat up. And he said, "I knew you'd be back." And he's like, and then I don't remember what happened, but I know my mom was concerned. And my mind probably deleted that memory to save myself. It's probably recessed in there somewhere. But when I look back on it, no matter what he did, I earned that shit because I was disrespectful. Right. You know what I mean? And I think that gets looked at as like if he was emotionally intelligent, he would say, "Listen, the reason why I did that and I don't let you disrespect me is because most people won't play with disrespect in this world. And if you go running your mouth like that to somebody right out there on the street, as for me, I just knuckle you up a little bit. He might pull out a gun and end your life."
Right.
Just off of general principle. Oh, you said what? Bop. Now you're bleeding. Now you're leaking. Go fix that.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think as a man, as a parent, especially to my son, that's a lot of things I make sure I do is I tell him, like, I give him forewarning. So when that Undertaker bell tolls, they know, hey, he gave me warning. Dang it. Right. It's up. They can't even dispute it. And then afterwards, I give them listen, do you understand why I had to do that, right? Why do you think I had to do that? Let me tell you why. And that kind of like in the Army, we used to do an after action review. Kind of like I take that mentality to that. But these energies are both needed. And I think I hate when it's like our society today is there's always has to be a polarization, right? The
Right.
Republicans or the Democrats, and you're right, we're wrong, and everything. It's everything's turned into a you versus type culture, and I think that's where we miss out on this. Is none of the good gets looked at, but all the bad. Like when you see some of these feminists that they try to say there's an imbalance. It's a patriarchal structure that men get to run everything, and it's like, has everything been that bad? And you don't like a lot of times people don't understand that the selflessness and sacrifice that comes with being a patriarch. They only look at whatever benefits that you see. And I think, and I hope if anybody's listening, especially if they're of the opposite sex or they have that matriarchal energy, that they understand that there's a lot of sacrifice and willing. Like we know as the patriarchs in our families that there's going to be times where the kids are mad with us and the wife is consoling them because that's her duty, is to make sure they see through the moment. So you understand that you're kind of isolated from the family.
Right.
Maybe they're not against you, but they're holding up together, and you're left figuring out, like having to stand by what you did. And that takes a toll on a man, you know? And I think that's not to give your dad an excuse or whatever, because I don't really know, but I could kind of see it where if you're putting all this energy in and you don't get any appreciation in return, you start running out of gas on why you're doing this in the first place. And I think if I was telling my wife Kamala this the other night, I was like, I wish sometimes like I could have like a State of the Union address to where I could address women sometimes about what it's like to be a man and how you could easily fix a lot of the stuff with your man.
Right.
Like think about like, not gonna put you don't have to put your particular relationship on this out there like that, but imagine a guy that has a girl that's always arguing or whatever. The way that some women act is like they're never wrong. And it's like the way a man sees that is like, I'm a smart guy, right? If I'm a smart guy, how the hell is it possible that I'm wrong every time? It's not.
Right, 100%.
So if that woman in that same case admitted when she was wrong and took ownership and accountability, what that would do to a man, he would be blown away. He's like, you know what, Ray, babe, you were right this time. I messed up. I should have never. Your guy will look at you like, whoa, what is going on?
Right.
Or if you just
must be a prank.
You know, I know you really worked your ass off. I really appreciate you. I appreciate what you do to this family. Or I knew it was hard for you to punish him that way. And I know it probably hurt you. Like, it's funny, like we hear these sayings and then you realize what it actually means. Like when I was a kid, it was, my mom would tell me though, it's going to hurt me more than it hurts you. It's going to hurt me more than it hurts you. And you're like, man, whatever, on the belt's hitting me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But when you're in that role, when you're in the parental role, you understand what that means. Like they don't do it because they want to. They're not like, man, I hope he fucked up today so I can wear him out. They do it. It's a sacrifice. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
You're willing to receive some hate for the greater good. So that's I kind of went on a tangent there, but that's kind of the overall vibe.
No, I feel it. I'm with it. Hold on really quick. Tonight's topic. Oops, that was supposed to be a question mark, but whatever. Statement now. Well, for those of you who this is your first time on the Men's Circle, we always end with a couple of the takeaways from the conversation. So tonight I have 6. Is that Storm?
Yeah, she's
and trying to get in the house.
Well, she's running in circles. Like she's figured out how to open the side garage door, so I had to lock that. So she let herself out the side door. And then she came through the garage. I'm like, who the hell's in the garage? She walks, and I'm like, she's just curious, rambunctious pup.
Just a smart dog, that's all. Yeah. But for those of you who this is your first time, what we do is at the end of the show, I like to do the takeaways. Tonight I have six takeaways that I want to share that came from the conversation. And the very first one that I want to bring up is the one you said, Tim, was what you sacrifice in fun, you give up in reverence. And vice versa. What you sacrifice in reverence, you give up in fun. I think that was a profound statement because it really, when I think about my role as the father in the patriarch, again, there's multiple roles you play in the patriarch, but my role as the father in the patriarch, even in the house where I asked myself, how do I want to show up as the father? There were things that I was willing to do for fun. Hey, after dinner, we're going to go and take a family walk, and all the kids would be with me. But it was like, hey, we're out having this walk, but it's also dark out here, so you can't be running around and jumping off the sidewalk into the street. Like, because if you're going to do that, then you won't be allowed to come on the walk. So I think there is a balance, and sometimes we lean, the pendulum swings too far left or too far right. But there is a balance in there that I don't even want to say there's balance. There is an appropriate measurement depending on the situation. And as the patriarch, it is our responsibility to test that balance or test that metric and see if it's getting us the results that we want. If we find that we're losing a little too much reverence, like I don't think there's been definitely times where I've had conversations with Z where he's like, yo, I remember I wanted to fight you, but at the same time, though I wanted to, I wasn't stupid. There's that reverence, and then there's too much of the fun reverence where it's like, I wanted to fight you and I did because I felt like I could take you, and then you whooped my ass. And I realized that was a bad decision, right? So there is that. That's key takeaway number one. Key takeaway number two is the patriarch is celebrated after the moment. That's also something that you said, Tim. The mother is absolutely, or the matriarch is absolutely celebrated in the moment and is often celebrated after the moment. When you think about, like, I think about my grandma, Irma, who's since passed away. I can't remember what year she passed away in, but many years ago she passed away. She was celebrated in the moment, making the caramel cake, making the biscuits, loving you and spending summers at her house, celebrated in the moment. And even in her absence, she is still celebrated. Whereas for many of us in this patriarchal role, we are celebrated after the fact. Z didn't celebrate me as a teenager. He's like, fuck, like I'm trying to skip school and you're showing up to the school embarrassing me. The kid is not going to celebrate that. But after you graduate and realize that, dang, I was skipping school and I tried to lie this and lie that, and my dad always came back with getting the facts straight. Now I respect that. And in this moment that I'm in after that moment, I celebrate you for being who you needed to be in that moment. But I didn't realize that I needed to be that person in that moment.
But that's because
that, like, I think you just hit a lightning bolt with me because of that Maya Angelou quote. You'll never remember what somebody said, but you always remember how they made you feel. And the matriarchs deal in feelings for most of it, so that they're more. Maybe we're onto something. So yeah. So that's key takeaway number two. Key takeaway number three is we all have some type of patriarchal role model in one direction or another. That came from my cousin Bobby. I do agree with that comment, even though I struggle to see where that patriarch in the aspect of the patriarch that I want to be, right, existed in my family. There were plenty of things that led me into the patriarch that I inevitably became and am becoming because of people that I seen in my family that I did not feel were doing it right. Key takeaway number four is the patriarch needs accountability partners and not cheerleaders. And I want to actually correct that takeaway because I think it is we need accountability partners and cheerleaders. But in the event where there has to be one or the other, we need accountability because that, I'll say that in the next one. But that is something that is a crucial element to sustaining the patriarchal we'll call it the patriarchal glue manufacturing. Key takeaway number five is appreciation is the fuel of the patriarch. I believe you were onto something, Tim, when you said, people burn out in the patriarchal role because as it is naturally a thankless role, right? If you're going to be appreciated after the fact years later, you're going to go a long time. It'd be like being at your job and never moving up
until 15 years in. They're like, we really want to give you this promotion now. Yeah, I already don't give a shit now. It's too late. So appreciation being the fuel of the patriarch. That really resonates with me, because I tell my wife, I tell people all the time, like, appreciation will get you very far with me. A lack of appreciation will pretty much have me closing up shop. And then the last takeaway is takeaway number 6. Compassion is the male equivalent of nurture in the patriarch. That is our nurture, is, for me at least, and I believe for many of us, that many men is stoic and as hard as we seem like we have to be. There is never, for me, I'm going to say, there is never a moment where I am not thinking compassionately, even if I am acting counterintuitive to that compassion. Which is why here we are. My son went to the military in 2020. And so here we are 4 years later, and still remembering that moment where he was gone and how that impacted me still creates an emotional shockwave, because of the fact that though I was telling him, you got to figure it out, and you can't figure it out here because of the nature of our relationship, even in that decision and in that conversation, there was still compassion, because I understood that overall I could have been like, yeah, you can stay here. And that would have inevitably, for me, led to us destroying the relationship. And that's not what I want. I'd rather you feel like the relationship is coming to an end and come back to it later because you realize it, than allow you to stay and then destroy it and know for myself that relationship has now come to an end. So that was the key takeaway number 6. The only other thing I have here, I had to ask what were the final thoughts from the chat. My cousin Bobby said, my final thoughts are keep these conversations going. We as men need it. The only reason I have the men's circle going, because it is therapeutic for me, therapeutic for any man that joins in. I appreciate you guys jumping in live tonight and giving your feedback, sharing your insights, and just being a part of the overall conversation. We will be back in 2 weeks for the next men's circle. But actually this week, I have an intersession that I will be doing on Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be about conversations, or creating organic connections through conversations. Sorry. And that will be with Maureen Lawton, a young lady that I was fortunate to be introduced to by a longtime friend of mine. She is a owner and founder of Dream Catchers. And so we're going to just have an organic conversation this Thursday. So if you were here during the intersession era, I would recommend you tune in this Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for that intersession. Other than that, as always, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. I'm always happy to engage with you in the comments, and I'm also happy to engage with you in the live chat. I'm sorry, in the live chat and in the comments up to the first 7 days that the content is out. After that, I move on to either new content or I just take a break from looking at YouTube. So either way, I thank you for your time. Thank you for your brotherhood, Brother Tim, for joining me. But until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for watching The First Row.